Enter, rejoice, and log in. Enter, rejoice, and log in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and log in.
If you have a chalice at home or a candle, it would be great if you would have that now, and we'll light it together. We light this flame as a symbol of new life, enlightening our way, as a symbol of the warmth in every human heart. Let the lighting of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of hope, of peace, of love. May we share that light with all people.
Good morning. I am Marie Luna, your Director of Congregational Life. Thank you for welcoming us into your home today. It is good to be together, even in this online format. If you are joining us from another Unitarian Universalist congregation, welcome. If this is your first time visiting the fellowship, I want to extend you a special welcome. I hope that you will reach out to me to get more connected. One great opportunity for this is to join me for a special newcomer breakout after this service. More information on that later. Today's service is being led and supported by Allie Peters, our intern minister, Reverend Christina Leon Tracy, our senior minister, Reverend Leah Angiri, our associate minister, Kim Hartman, our director of religious education, Steve Seek, our music director, our wonderful musicians and singers, Brian Merton, our lay worship leader, and Adam Robinson, our AV tech. Thank you to everyone who has made this morning's service possible. This year, we are focusing on growing resilience throughout our worship services at the fellowship. And right now, we are in the theme of flourishing. We hope that each of us is able to grow and flourish in this community that we have cultivated together. It is now time to settle in to your space, wherever you are, to take a deep breath and be present to this time together, even from afar.
May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be
Hi, Kim.
Hey, Christina.
It's time for our Time for All Ages, and I'm so excited that I get to do this with you today.
Me too.
One of my favorite things about being a Unitarian Universalist is that we get to wonder together, that we don't have to know all the answers to everything, and we can sometimes just guess. So
That's one of my favorite parts too.
I know, it's so great. And so as we get ready for the Time for All Ages, I don't have a wonder box at home right now, but I do have an object. So do you have any guesses what the object might be?
I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna say it could be a dandelion, or it could be a violet.
Yeah, I've seen some of those. My yard has lots of dandelions right now because we're doing the no mow May.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, great.
Let's see. If anybody at home has any guesses what it might be, maybe type it into the chat box or have your grown-up type for you what you think the object might be. So let's wait just a moment to see what those guesses are. I love reading them when we're all watching on Zoom together. Okay, here we go. Let's find out. Drum roll, please. It's an egg. I mean, it is springtime, so eggs are a thing. It's not Easter though, so I wonder what this egg is all about. But it is beautiful, kind of a pretty tan color and smooth and shiny, and it kind of like rolls.
Oh no! Oh no! Christina! Oh
Oh my gosh.
no! Oh no!
I broke it. I broke it pretty bad. Yeah, let's see.
Oh man.
I feel so sad.
Yeah. Are you gonna try to fix it or something?
I mean, I guess I could try. Let's see. I've got some tape here.
That might be good. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, here. Let me just tape it.
Oh man. You know, Christina, this actually reminds me of a story.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a story called After the Fall, How Humpty Dumpty Got Back Up Again. And it's written by an author named Dan Santat. My name is Humpty Dumpty. This was my favorite spot, high up on the wall. I know, it's an odd place for an egg to be, but I love being close to the birds. Then one day, I fell. I'm sort of famous for that part. Folks called it the Great Fall, which sounds a little grand. It was just an accident, but it changed my life.
Fortunately, all the king's men managed to put me back together. Well, most of me. There were some parts that couldn't be healed with bandages and glue.
After that day, I became afraid of heights. I was scared that it kept me from enjoying some of my favorite things. I walked past that wall every day, and I would think about climbing that ladder again. I really missed the birds and being high above the city, but I could never do it because I know that accidents can happen.
I eventually settled for watching the birds from the ground. It wasn't the same, but it was better than nothing. And then one day, an idea flew by. Making planes was harder than I thought. It was easy to get cuts and scratches, but day after day, I kept trying and trying.
Until I got it just right. My plane was perfect, and it flew like nothing could stop it. I hadn't felt that happy in a long time. It wasn't the same as being up in the sky with the birds, but it was close enough.
Unfortunately, accidents happen. They always do.
I almost walked away again. But then I thought about all the time that I'd spent working on my plane and all the other things that I'd missed. And I decided I was going to climb that wall. But the higher I got, the more nervous I felt. I didn't want to admit it. I was terrified.
I didn't look up. I didn't look down. I just kept climbing, one step at a time, until I was no longer afraid.
So maybe now you won't think of me as that egg who is famous for falling.
Hopefully, you'll remember me as the egg who got back up and learned how to fly.
Life begins when you get back up.
Oh, that is such a sweet story.
Yeah, I think so. So, as we begin our new week, let's remember that, like Humpty Dumpty, life can sometimes throw you a curveball, things that happen that you didn't expect, and you have to find another way forward. And even if our lives change in a way that we didn't expect, sometimes it might even be good.
That's good to remember. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you, Christine.
Bye, everyone.
An excerpt from Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change.
An excerpt from The Depth of Change, an essay by the poet Young Pueblo. If you spend too much time fearing change, you will forget to celebrate it. Everything within the universe of mind and matter exists because of the movement of change. Every conceivable level, from the atomic to the molecular to the mental and to the conventional level where we live our lives, is constantly in motion. This pervasive, ephemeral quality is everywhere, impacting reality whether we are aware of it or not. Without the undercurrent of change, life itself would not be possible. Since human beings have the vast majority of their awareness focused on the conventional level, it becomes easy to forget that changes, big and small, are currently happening and are bound to continue occurring. The rapid speed of change at the atomic level is so hard for the mind to grasp that it falls into the category of something that is easy to ignore. The slower changes of planets and stars feel so far removed that they are also easily disregarded. Even in our local lives, impermanence is an afterthought until something significant happens that makes this truth unavoidable. All the things we love arise into being because the ups and downs of change have given them their shape. The people we cherish, the moments that brought us joy, the victories that helped us heal and live better, all of these things were facilitated by change. If all things were static, there would be nothing new. Our very lives are the product of change. Change is easy to recognize when it takes things away. Endings are louder than beginnings. Loss is more easily remembered than gratitude. If we are to strike a healthy mental balance, we need to honor the fact that love, joy, and compassion, the sweetest parts of life, actually become stronger and clearer the more we embrace the reality of change. Instead of passively hating change, we are better off trying to understand it. Change may take things away, but it is also the great giver that fills us with happiness and wisdom.
There are two things I need most when dealing with change: facts and a timeline. First, I need to separate the truth from the opinion so I can determine what about the change deserves my attention and what can be set aside. Like a story problem in math, there are always extraneous bits of information that are more distracting than helpful in finding the solution. And second, a timeline is needed to get a sense of how long this change is going to take. How much energy will I need? When will we be at the halfway point? How will I know when the change is done? Now, this approach has generally worked well for me several times in my life: buying a house, starting a new job, and navigating parenthood. I tend to see change like a jigsaw puzzle that needs to be put together. The box tells you the number of pieces and gives you a visual of what the after will look like when you're done. And yet, this pandemic has been like a garage sale puzzle with a cover missing and pieces from 5 other puzzles mixed in. I had a hard time separating fact from fiction. It was difficult to know what sources to trust with a multitude of outlets to gather information from. Some said this was all much ado over nothing, and others portrayed it like life would never be the same again. I wanted to believe the things that told me everything was going to be okay, but I knew that the more we learned, the more serious things became. The timeline aspect was tricky as well. That kept changing based upon dozens of other factors. For a long time, not having an end in sight was really draining for me. When would the vaccine be available? Would these restrictions continue forever? I remember back in April of last year, when reality sank in, there was this push for everyone to become home bakers and bedroom redecorators. "It's a great time to reinvent yourself," the headlines cheerfully yelled at me. And yet, my ukulele sat unpracticed. I made exactly 1 loaf of bread and opened 0 cans of house paint. In some ways, it feels like the only thing that really flourished for me during 2020 was my hair. As the months went on, I realized that there was a third thing I needed when dealing with change, especially a change of this magnitude. I needed other people. Too often, I get stuck in my head that I'm the one responsible for fixing or ignoring my problems, and that self-sufficiency is the most admirable trait. Yeah, COVID threw that theory directly into the used mask-filled dumpster. In spite of staying physically distanced from others, I still had many ways to get and stay connected. I called and emailed family members. I texted and FaceTimed with friends. I walked outside and had deep conversations with others and learned of their strategies for making this all a little less awful. What facts they had learned and what timelines they were operating under. No one person had all the answers, of course, but I could pick and choose and piece together strategies that worked for me. Learning how others approached this change was really valuable. Even setting the pandemic aside, it feels like we're also in the midst of enormous social change. We must listen to those who have not been given a voice. There are so many stories that need to be heard. It can be uncomfortable as we learn of the things we've been wrong about and need to do better. Facts and timelines will continue to change the more we learn and the more we listen. But none of that work can truly be done alone. We can't be self-reliant on finding the way through change of this magnitude. It's like that old adage: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And let's face it, puzzles are way more fun to put together when other people are helping you.
Thank you so much, Brian, for your thoughtful and wise reflection. As a child, I was afraid of wind. Yeah, wind. If I'm honest, I don't know exactly where this fear came from. My memory traces it back to a time when my brother was watching the movie Twister on our family television. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but however it started. This was a fear that lasted with me all through elementary school and into middle school. I can vividly remember laying in my bed at night, listening to the rustle of the branches on the tree outside our house, worrying that the wind was going to be strong enough to topple the tree onto our house through my bedroom ceiling, where it would crush me in my sleep. I remember playing on the playground at recess and freezing in place when I noticed the beginning of a breeze. It's something that always took me out of whatever game I was playing and put me on my guard, at least a little. Luckily, this isn't a fear that I've carried with me into adulthood, but I do find myself still uneasy on boats and airplanes because without the assurance of solid ground, I feel much more susceptible to the whims of the wind. In my defense, just think about it. Wind is such a simple example of something so out of our control, something unstoppable that can knock things off balance. Wind does all those important things that we don't always notice, like spreading seeds and pollen, transporting heat and moisture, filling and pushing sails, blowing a cool breeze on a hot day. And yet, sometimes wind can also bring some mayhem and destruction. It is no wonder that for the longest time, wind has been used as a popular metaphor for change. We've heard the phrase winds of change mentioned in songs, in poetry. We've seen the iconic nanny, Mary Poppins, use the winds to signal that it was time for her to leave, a change that was sad for the Banks family. Change is so often out of our control, something unstoppable that can knock everything off balance. Change does all those important things that we don't always notice, spreading seeds of joy, filling and pushing sails toward justice, blowing a cool breeze of hope on a hard day. And yet, change can also bring mayhem and heartache, right? It's no wonder that just like my childhood discomfort with wind, I've also carried with me a deep discomfort with change, if I'm honest. And boy, have these past 14 months certainly highlighted that mayhem and heartache side of change, right? I mean, when the pandemic hit, our entire planet faced huge gusts of change that knocked everything off balance over and over again. For most of us, our daily lives changed. Our interactions changed. Our nervous system even changed in the ways that our bodies reacted to stuff that we wouldn't have thought twice about before. The people we were in 2019 would likely have a hard time recognizing what our lives have been like this past year. And all this change, plus the grief and trauma of a global pandemic, well, it's certainly taken its toll on all of us in so many different ways. We've talked for more than a year about how great it will be when things return to some sense of normalcy, right? We have longed for the days when we can gather together safely, when we can attend concerts and other big events, when we can sing songs together inside our beautiful fellowship sanctuary, when we can sit inside a restaurant mask-free without any hesitation or second guessing. Just saying it now sounds so luxurious. And among many in our fellowship community, there is one sentence in particular that I have heard shared over and over again this past year. I can't wait to hug you. This spring, many of us who have been fortunate enough to be vaccinated have been able to venture a little outside our bubbles of COVID restrictions. And it has been exciting, right? And also, after a year of adjusting to new routines and new ways of moving about the world, opening things back up and lifting restrictions does bring along more change. Joyful changes, to be sure, but also just the general stress of dealing with change. I so loved how Brian talked about working through change as assembling a jigsaw puzzle. During these past few months, it may have felt like we were finally understanding how the pieces of our new pandemic lives were fitting together in the puzzle. We may not have liked it, but at least we've had some time to figure out some order amid the chaos. Some new routines, some ways to cope, some understanding of how to interact with others during this time. And now, with many restrictions being lifted and the prospect of an end to the pandemic on the horizon, a new wind of change comes and upends the puzzle, scattering all the pieces everywhere once again, disorienting us once again. Once again, we have to work to understand how the pieces of our lives fit together in this changing world. This past week, the CDC shared some big news. After months and months of caution, the CDC is now changing their recommendation, sharing that they believe it is safe for those who are vaccinated to gather indoors and even to leave their masks at home in many situations. For more information on this, you can go ahead and visit the CDC website. This is the news that many of us have been waiting for, right? Perhaps you are someone who is vaccinated and you heard this news with nothing but jubilation and eager excitement. Perhaps you exist in a body that is still vulnerable and you heard this news feeling like an outsider with worry and fear of being left behind. Perhaps you're someone like me and the news didn't quite hit the way you expected. If you're like me, you read it, you were confused a little, so you reread it, and then took a big breath, bracing yourself with what feels like an overwhelming question. Okay, what does this mean? Playing in your head the many different situations you may find yourself in on a daily basis. Asking yourself, what is it appropriate to expect now? What does this mean for loved ones who are still vulnerable? What is it that I personally feel comfortable doing now? What can I expect others to want from me now? How do I move forward at work or in social situations? What does that look like? There was a great Saturday Night Live sketch last week that showed people at a party struggling to figure out how to interact with each other after the pandemic was over. It featured awkward dead-end conversations where one person asked the other person, "Which shot did you get?" And they said Moderna, and then the other person was like, "Cool." It featured one guy chatting with someone else, and all he could think to say was, "It's such a crazy time right now." I think he may have said it like 5 times in the conversation. Or one person who went in for a hug while the other person was visibly uncomfortable, and so she sticks her elbow out instead. So the hugger just ends up kind of holding her elbow in his hands. The sketch did a great job of poking fun at some of the discomfort and uncertainty and awkwardness that comes with figuring out how to move forward in this new phase of pandemic life. Life changed. It changed us. And now we are navigating new and different changes, all the while still getting used to those changes that have happened in us. I feel so grateful for our readings this morning that offer some valuable perspective on change. Perspective that we can learn from and ground ourselves in. In fact, I like to imagine these two readings in conversation with each other. The science fiction writer Octavia Butler, a Black American baby boomer, sharing the theology of a teenage girl protagonist in her dystopian novel, Parable of the Sower. And then the Ecuadorian American millennial poet, young Pueblo, who is sharing his own personal musings through an internet newsletter. Reading these pieces together, I like to pretend Octavia Butler and young Pueblo are talking directly to each other, responding to each other, elaborating on each other's points, even though they write almost 30 years apart. She says, "All that you touch, you change." He says, "This pervasive ephemeral quality is everywhere, impacting reality whether we are aware of it or not." She says, "All that you change changes you." He says, "Our very lives are the product of change." She says, "The only lasting truth is change." He says, "Instead of passively hating change, we are better off trying to understand it." She says, "God is change." He nods his head in agreement, saying, "Change may take things away, but it is also the great giver that fills us with happiness and wisdom." Change is complex, isn't it? It is messy, it is beautiful, it is devastating, it is exciting. Change leads us to celebration, and change calls us into grief. And it is always there, always moving around us and within us. An unstoppable wind blowing the puzzle pieces all around. I just love this idea that God is change. Whether or not that jives with your conception of God, whether or not you are even someone who uses the word God, I invite us to play around with this idea a bit. This idea that change is so big and sacred and unstoppable and all-encompassing and all-permeating and divine that there is no way that that is not what God is. Young Pueblo himself says it, change may take things away, but it is also the great giver that fills us with happiness and wisdom. It's not unlike the Greek word pneuma, a word used in the Christian Bible that has been translated as both wind and spirit. It is not unlike the Buddhist understanding of impermanence that tells us that everything is constantly arising and falling away. Arising and falling away. And so, if change is God, or if this sacred, lasting truth that is constantly shaping all of existence, if that is change, then these times of great change that we are moving through in our world are unique opportunities to intimately know that which is sacred and holy and divine. To intimately know it by navigating the changes that have been happening within ourselves and each other, as well as those taking place all around us. Navigating and sitting with these changes with deep intention and care. As a fellowship community, we are facing many opportunities to do this sacred work together in the coming months. If you are on our email list, you received an email this past week sharing our current fellowship phased reopening plan, thoughtfully designed by our executive team and our COVID Safer Reopening Task Force, a group of experienced medical professionals here in our own fellowship community. Now, this reopening plan may change and change again. And I, for one, feel so grateful to be a part of a faith community that is being guided through the coming months by our values and by science. For those of us who are local and feel eager to regather and hug right away, this sacred work of navigating change will likely take some patience, some understanding, some adapting. For those of us feeling more hesitant or nervous or unsure, the sacred work of navigating change will likely take some deep reflection and self-compassion and tenderness. For all of us, it will take some trust, some presence, some care, some gentleness, some loving awareness of the fact that this past year has changed us, some willingness to be a bit groundless together and to see what we create from that groundlessness. In the coming months, the winds of change are also blowing some staffing changes our way. Reverend Leah's upcoming move is certainly a joyful one for her and her family. And yet I know for many of us, it feels like this change will be leaving a big hole in our congregation. Still, we are called to the sacred work of intimately experiencing this change, sitting with it. For all of us, this change will take some grieving, some loving awareness of the fact that Reverend Leah has changed us in important ways. Some trust that she is sown into the fabric of this congregation, regardless of where her beautiful ministry takes her. Some willingness to be a bit groundless together and to see what we create from that groundlessness. It is sacred work, and it is not achievable alone. So as these winds whip around us, may we hold each other with care. May we look to each other to help keep us steady. And may we let these winds draw us closer together as we soak in that divine constant that is change. May it be so. And amen.
Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Let the dancing song be heard. Play the music, say the words, and fill the sky with sailing birds. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. Learn to follow, learn to lead. Feel the rhythm, feel the need. To reap the harvest, plant the seed. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Everybody turn and spin. Let your body burn to that. And like a willow with the wind. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance.
The Universalist ancestors who contributed to the Unitarian Universalism of our present moment insisted that the only way any of us might be able to truly flourish is by finding a way to thrive together, in concert with one another's joys and concerns. We honor this legacy by transforming it into practice, into the ritual of sharing our individual joys and concerns, sorrows and celebrations, so that we might know and care for one another as our community moves toward resilience. Connection is always available. If you would like to share whatever is on your mind or in your heart, you can type your joy and concern into the chat box now. We will hold space with you and for you as we worship. If you would like us to include your news in our weekly care email that goes out to members and friends who have asked to receive it, you may email me or you can fill out our website form. I'm going to drop that information into the chat box now. After our service, a member of the care team will host a breakout room for anyone who would like to process their life's joy or concern, or anything that might be especially poignant for you in life right now. You can hear more instructions about how to join this breakout room during our closing words, but please know everyone is cordially invited. And I always welcome you to be in touch if you would like to connect with me or you'd like to be connected with a member of our wonderful care team. Now, some silence.
And we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give, we have our thoughts to receive, and we believe that sharing is an answer.
This month, we're focusing on flourishing. And so now, as we take part in our morning offering, it's a time to imagine a flourishing of generosity. What would that flourishing look like? What might it feel like? What would it mean to have abundance in spirit and in resources? We invite you into that contemplation of flourishing, and we invite you to make it real. We know that there are always those among us who are in need, and we are here to help. It's why we exist as a fellowship, to be here when you need us. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me, Reverend Leah, or Allie if you are in need of emotional or financial support so we can offer some help. We also want to honor that there are those among us with resources to share and abundance to offer. Our community is still gathering virtually, but our expenses are real. If you have never donated to the fellowship or haven't in a while, please do so now, so that our ministries might be able to continue to flourish for the months and years to come. And now, as you hear these words from our member, Cindy Darling, think about why you are a part of the fellowship and why you give. And then, please do.
Hi, my name is Cindy Darling, and I'm a member of the Fox Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. One of the reasons that I still love being part of the fellowship, even during the pandemic, is that I love that connection that we still have. Being able to see everybody, you can't hug, but being able to see those smiles and those great faces. So I look forward to continuing to see everybody.
As we come to the end of our service, I want to take a moment to honor Allie and her incredible year with us. A couple of years ago, when we began to envision a gift for our minister emeritus, Reverend Roger Birchhausen, we imagined being a congregation that could help in the formation of Unitarian Universalist ministers as an internship site in his name. What we couldn't have imagined then was that our first ever Birchhausen intern minister would come to us during a worldwide pandemic, serve almost entirely remotely, much of the internship from out of state, and that she would be as amazing as Allie has been. It has personally been such a joy to be part of Allie's ministerial formation experience as her supervisor this year. I also want to acknowledge and thank the members of the Intern Support Committee who met with Allie monthly to offer feedback and support, and who have written her midterm and final evaluations for the UUA. They are Gail Dolan, who is the chair of the committee, Brian Merton, Deb Andrews, Amy Barrett, and Joe Bongers. Thank you. And thank you to Allie for bringing your gifts and talents, your joyful spirit, and your commitment to ministry to our fellowship during this wild year. We say goodbye for now, and we wish you the best this summer as you return to New Jersey and complete your chaplaincy internship. But we look forward to your return on September 1st as our one-year assistant minister. In honor of the conclusion of your internship, we are giving you a gift. Since everything this year is online, this one will be too. But you will be receiving an email gift certificate for a pretty hefty amount to Women's Spirit, a company which makes clerical robes, albs, collars, and stoles for women clergy. We encourage you to use this gift however you feel best, but it will be enough to purchase a robe if you want. We love you, Allie. Congratulations on this milestone.
As we come to the end of our service, we will extinguish our chalice flame, even as we still hold its light in our hearts. As we extinguish this flame, let us go our ways with hope in our hearts, with our spirits renewed, and with a deeper understanding of life's mystery. Let us carry the light of compassion and commitment to build a better world.
After our closing words, we will be having small breakout groups for conversation. In a moment, we will hear a short postlude song. If you do not wish to participate in any small group conversations, then please use that postlude music time to log off and leave this Zoom meeting. If you choose to stay, you will be invited to choose your own breakout group on Zoom. One option will be for newcomers to join our Director of Congregational Life, Marie Luna, in a special newcomer group. One option will be to join someone from our care team if you would like to share more personally and deeply about whatever is on your heart. One group will be led by me, where you can check in about changes in your life. Another group will be led by Allie about change and spirituality. And one final group will be just for informal, unmoderated chit-chat. If you have any trouble selecting your group, just stay here and we'll do our best to help you in a moment. And with that, go in resilience, growing in strength. Go in flourishing, opening up to beauty and joy. Go in peace, knowing we embrace each other, even now, from a distance.